Welcome to another episode of the Lyceum of History, the Native Americans of the Great Plains. Our video goals are to look at the geography of the Great Plains, the culture and history of the tribes that live there, and the tribes today. The Great Plains is primarily grassland with very few trees, and the further west you go, the drier it gets. Its borders are the Canadian provinces of southern Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. In the south, northern Texas, the east, the Mississippi River, and the west, the Rocky Mountains. And you can see on the map the arrow pointing to the Great Plains region. The climate of the Great Plains is such that there are 4 distinct seasons, ranging from hot summers to cold winters. The precipitation varies depending on where you are, ranging anywhere from 10 to 30 inches per year. And again, the further west you go, the drier it gets. The area is also known as Tornado Alley because there's very few natural barriers to block the cold Arctic air with the moist, warm air that comes from the Gulf of Mexico, producing frequent tornadoes more than any other place in the world. Now let's look at some of the major tribes that lived on the plains. The Sioux were one of the most powerful and well-known tribes, known for their resistance to European settlers and their role in major conflicts like the Battle of Little Bighorn. One of the branches of the Sioux, the Dakota, is where we get the names North and South Dakota, the states. The Cheyenne were skilled warriors and traders, playing a crucial role in the Plains Indian Wars and forming a strong alliance with the Lakota Sioux. The Comanche were dominant in the southern plains, renowned for their horse riding skills and control over vast territories which they fiercely defended against settlers and other tribes. They earned the nickname Lords of the Southern Plains, and are considered some of the best horse riders in the world. The Blackfeet were dominant in the northern plains, known for their hunting prowess, particularly of buffalo, and their strong defense of their lands against both European settlers and rival tribes. The Apache were a key tribe in the central plains, known for their adaptability, involvement in trade networks, and their participation in alliance and conflicts with neighboring tribes and settlers. Many tribes were governed by a council of elders, or respected leaders who made decisions for the tribe. These councils often included chiefs, who were chosen based off their wisdom, bravery, or leadership qualities. And decisions were often made through consensus, meaning that leaders would discuss and agree on actions with the input of the tribe members, rather than just by a single ruler's decree, or a king. The Native Americans of the Plains relied on the buffalo for much of their food and resources, so the teepee was a perfect portable home for such a nomadic lifestyle. They were cone-shaped designs which were efficient for keeping it cool in the summer and warm in the winter. They had a smoke hole on top and were often decorated. They were usually an average height of 8 to 10 feet, but with the introduction of the horse, they were able to carry a lot more material, and thus teepees became much larger. Their diet consisted of bison, other wild game, wild plants, roots, berries, and nuts, all depending on which part of the plains they lived in. They also made pemmican, a traditional food that was made from dried buffalo meat, mixed with fat and sometimes berries. This was an especially important meal as it lasted for a long time and could be used on long hunting expeditions. In some tribes, especially those near river valleys and to the east, would grow the 3 sisters of corn, beans, and squash. Further west, agriculture wasn't as much of a possibility, thus the reliance on the bison. Their clothing was made mostly from the hide of the bison. Men wore breechcloths and leggings, and in winter they added bison furs. Women wore bison dresses or skirts with leggings, often decorated with beads, quill work, or painted designs. Both men and women wore moccasins, which were soft leather shoes that protected their feet. Each tribe had a unique way of showing their heritage and culture via their clothing. The technology of the Great Plains Indians included stone tools, such as arrowheads, tomahawks, and knives. They also utilized the bow and arrow, and for traveling long distances they used the travois. They also used signal fires, as the Great Plains has much open sky, so signal fires were an effective way to communicate, especially before the arrival of the horse by the Europeans. The tribes worshipped the Great Spirit, and their nature worship involved a form of religion called animism, in which it's believed that all things, living and non-living, have a spirit. To honor these spirits, they performed ceremonies and rituals throughout the year. They also had medicine men, or shamans, that were used to try to treat illness that they believe was sometimes caused by a spiritual entity. While mentioned earlier, the importance of the bison can't be underestimated. As you can see in the chart, they use the bison for all sorts of things. For storage, for tools, for food, for teepees, for fur, and so much more. The arrival of the horse from the Europeans radically changed life on the plains. It meant that they could hunt farther and longer. Larger teepees could be built and carried, and horses could travel much further than dogs. And it became so important that horses actually became a part of their ceremonies and their art. The importance of the horse became second to only the bison. Today, many Native Americans of Great Plain ancestry live in reservations, with large ones being in Nebraska, South and North Dakota, as well as some in Minnesota and Oklahoma. To summarize, the Great Plains was home to multiple Native American tribes, each with their own unique culture. The area is home to grasslands with hot summers and cold winters. The bison was the most important animal, followed by the horse, and their ancestors still live in the area today. Thank you so much for watching this video from the Lyceum of History. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to more videos from the Lyceum of History.